Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Always feels weird sitting on a chair when there's like 5 people. What am I doing? If you guys are here, then come closer so it feels cozier, I guess. You guys are fine. I'm talking about the people in the back. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum, guys. This is my last Tazkiyah Tuesday. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. But there's the Nueces night still, right? We're doing next Friday. That's my last event. Do you guys want to play a guessing game? Do you guys want to guess what I'm talking about today? No. Ramadan's over. Okay. That's a safe answer. Tazkiyah. Okay. Close?
Tazkiyah Tuesday.
You got it. Tazkiyah Tuesday. Let me give you guys a hint. What weighs the most on our scale on Yawm al-Qiyamah? Yeah, but which kind of deeds? Obviously our deeds. What else is going to be weighed? Do you guys know the hadith? It's a hadith, something that weighs the most of our deeds on Yawm al-Qiyamah. You guys can guess which good deed, or it's not a good deed. It's a category of good deeds. Dhikr? No. Good guess though. No. No. The first letter? The first letter is M. Manners. Manners. Today we're going to be talking about manners. After that very long introduction, we're talking about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's mission behind being sent to us, which was manners. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ صَالِحَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, that he was sent to us to fulfill, basically to perfect our good character. I kind of want to. I'll see here. So, why did I choose the topic of manners? And I was thinking about it when I was choosing this topic. I'm like, we always talk about manners, right? This is like a topic that everybody talks about. We all of us know that we need to have good manners. All of us work on perfecting our manners. But how much of us actually exemplify it? Like, how much of us think that our manners are as important as our prayer and as important as our salah? Like, how much do we actually think about that the way we treat other people and the way that we interact with other people is as important as all these other good deeds that we do? Like, whenever people would come and ask the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ a question, like, oh, give me advice, or advise me on this, or how do I go to Jannah, or how do I become better, all his answers, most of them, would be about being a better person with other people, about having good manners, about treating other people well. So nowadays we're kind of in this society, I think, where we've become so technical and so like, oh, am I allowed to do this? Is this halal or is this haram? Or so much, it's like there's so much focus on what's allowed and what's not allowed that people forget almost like what's the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do, right? Because there's a difference between haram and halal and right and wrong, right? Because haram and halal is like, okay, Allah said we are allowed to do this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said we can't do this. Right and wrong is more of a moral thing. And a lot of morals we do get from our deen, and a lot of morals is just about being a good person. So like, how much do we think about how are we making other people feel? How are we treating our families? How are we treating our parents? How are we treating our co-workers? How are we treating our classmates? How are we treating people that we don't like or that we are not friends with? How are we treating new Muslims or new, basically just new people in our societies, in our masjids, in our communities? How much are we thinking about this as much as we're thinking about, I can't go to Suhoor Fest, or I can't interact with the opposite gender, or I can't, focus on what we wear, or how our hijab looks, or the focus of just kind of like nitpicking on everything that's so technical that we forget about what's just the good thing to do and the kind of person you want to be. So you have to think about this. Why is it harder for us sometimes to think about our character than it is for us to think about ritual. Like, we know we have to pray, we know we have to fast, but how often do we think about just becoming a better person and focusing on our weaknesses that we have as people, like our character flaws, as much as we think about the concept of ritual? Although ritual is important, like you can't be a Muslim without praying and without fasting, but you also can't be a Muslim without having good character, or without at least trying to have good character. So the Arabic word, does anyone know the Arabic word for manners? Adab. Okay, that's a word, but there's another more technical fusha term. I mean, adab is a fusha term, but there's a more, a better term. Yeah? Akhlaq. And what does akhlaq, the root of akhlaq is what? Khalaqa. What does khalaqa mean? To create. Now this is interesting because what basically is being said over here by manners being called akhlaq, thank you, that it's part of who we are, what we're created to be. And there's an outer basically creation and an inner creation. And they both have the same root word. So the khuluq is manners. Akhlaq or khuluq is manners, the outer, basically the inner character that we have, the manners that we have. And the khalq is the outer body, how we look from the outside. That's why the dua that we make is Allahumma ahsan khuluqi kama ahsanta khalqi. That beautify me on the inside, just like you've beautified me on the outside, right? That's a dua that we always make. Now we have 3 types of akhlaq, or like kind of 3 levels that we should look at. The first one is between you and Allah. What does this consist of? This consists of, obviously the main thing is your tawheed, you believe in Allah and all that. But also your iman, so how strong is your iman, how strong is your trust in Allah, how strong is your connection to Allah, your ikhlas, the sincerity. There's a whole kind of talk that could be done about your manners between you and Allah, like the etiquette. Remember when you talked about the etiquette of dua and calling Allah by His names, that's exceeding your manners with Allah. Then you have the manners with you and the rest of mankind, or not even, we can say the rest of creation, because you also have manners with animals and how you should treat other creatures other than humans, and that's what we'll talk about today. And then you have manners with yourself too, and I think that's another topic itself. So how are you in your private life? How do you aim in perfection for everything you do? How do you worship in private? How do you try to become a better person for yourself? How do you take care of your body in terms of what you eat and how you exercise? All those things are your manners with yourself. So we're looking at the manners with other people because that's the one that you have to work on the most, right? Because with Allah is all forgiving, all merciful, and we have this natural respect towards Allah where we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our creator. And with ourselves, we have to work on it, but we have more interactions that we have other people, and we have more ahadith from the Prophet Muhammad about the way we treat other people. Now, we know that what I just told you guys in the beginning is that a person is not just about worship and ritual, but a person is about how they are with other people in their life. And good akhlaq, someone with good character, that part of them being good will be heavier on Yawm al-Qiyamah on their scale than any other good deed. It's a hadith, ما في شيء أثقل في الميزان من حسن الخلق, that nothing is heavier on the scale than basically good character. And we'll talk more about the kind of the way that good character could be used as a shortcut almost. Or if you are someone who finds it hard to stand up all night in prayer or fast, voluntary fast all the time, you can do this instead and reach the same level as someone who does that by having good character. So one question that's asked is, are we in control of our manners? What do you guys think? Are manners inherent? Are we born with our manners? Or are manners learned? What's your instinctual answer? What's the immediate answer you think of? Learned. You're unsure? Anyone have any guesses? Like you're born with them. No, but do you think we're born with good manners, or do you think we learn good manners? The environment? So you think we learn? Okay. Any other guesses? Anyone think otherwise? Yeah?
I feel like your personality is kind of something you're born with.
Okay.
But like
So would you say manners are a part of your personality?
Maybe, like if you have a certain personality trait, people might take offense to more than
Mm-hmm.
other traits. But
Okay.
if you're not doing it intentionally, so I don't know if it counts.
Okay. Yeah, you're on the right track. And I was also surprised by this answer when I was preparing this talk, is that it's both, right? So there are people who are born with good manners. And we know this from the hadith that we're going to be talking more about, where this basically, the Sahabi has this interaction with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet tells him, you have two qualities beloved to Allah, al-hilm wal-anah, like forbearance and deliberacy. And he asked, basically this guy was a smart guy who always knew like smart questions to ask, and he asked, Ya Rasulullah, are these two qualities that I have a gift from Allah, or did I like develop them in me, did I learn them? And he said they were a gift on you from Allah. And there's another hadith where the Prophet Muhammad tells us that إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَسَمَ بَيْنَكُمْ أَخْلَاقَكُمْ كَمَا قَسَمَ بَيْنَكُمْ أَرْزَاقَكُمْ, that Allah basically distributed your characters amongst you, just like your provisions or your wealth has been distributed amongst you. Now we know, so this hadith tells us that some people are born with certain traits or certain characteristics that are good, and some people learn them later in their lives. Right? So some people are born into rich families, and some people build themselves up from scratch. Right? Just like that, there's also some people who are born with certain fitness that apply to them, right? So some people may be more prone to, like their fitna or the thing they struggle with might be the opposite gender. Another person, it might be alcohol. Another person, it might be not being able to wear the hijab. People have things that they're born with, inherent tendencies or inherent qualities or flaws or weaknesses that people are born with. So some people are born with good manners, right? You have some people who you just see, wow, this person is just so gentle in their mannerism, and you realize that they were like that as a child too. That does not mean that manners cannot be learned or trained afterwards. And the thing about manners being learned is that you're rewarded more for a learned manner than a born manner. So for example, if, let's say if Aisha really struggles wearing the hijab and Jannah finds the hijab super easy to wear, Aisha will get more reward for wearing the hijab than Jannah because it's harder for Aisha than it is for Jannah. And obviously Jannah might have some other thing that's harder for her to do than Aisha. So everybody has like that's why the concept of ajr and reward in Islam is so unique, because you're rewarded according to your struggle. Like your efforts count just as much as your result. Right? So it's not just that Allah sees you're wearing the hijab, or Allah sees that you're praying 5 times a day and that's it, you get equal reward for it. But Allah sees how hard it is in your heart, like He knows the struggle that you feel in your heart when you have to do a certain act of worship, and you're rewarded based on how hard something is. Now, obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all just and all fair, so it's not like it's unfair that it's easy for someone, because everybody has a weakness and everybody has a flaw or a test in their life that they have to work with. So just like that, if someone is born with the capability of being intensely honest, like they're so honest all the time, they are rewarded for being an honest person. But someone has this, that urge to always lie, like for no reason, and that person chooses to be honest, they'll be rewarded more. So some manners are inherent, some manners are learned, but we all have the capability of equal capability of having good akhlaq and good mannerisms. It's important to remember always that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most fair, right? So there's no such thing as unequal opportunity. We all have equal opportunity to get to the highest level of Jannah as anyone else. So some akhlaq are inherent. Now, how do we have better character? And there's 4 main steps over here, and then we'll talk about some blessings, and then we'll talk about some specific good characters. So how to have better character? Number 1 is to seek knowledge. Because the more we know about different types of akhlaq, the more we know about how Allah rewards these characters, the more we know how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ talks about these characteristics, the more we'll want to do them. Like in the Quran, Luqman alayhi salam is teaching his son, this is how you be a good person, this is how you have good character, so on and so forth. So we're given examples, and we know how the Prophet also taught the companions how to be better people. So we know that the more we learn, the more we will become better. Even myself, when I was preparing this talk, and some things that you're like, okay, I know this already. I know I should control my anger. But when you actually hear about the Prophet Muhammad talking about how to control your anger, the benefits of controlling your anger, how Allah loves those people who control their anger, when you listen to the actual hadith, then you think more about doing that good characteristic, right? So the more you learn about the virtues of being a good person, the more you become a good person. Number 2 is to seek a role model. Now, who is our main role model when we're trying to become better people? The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He's the best of all examples. But not only that, and also about the Prophet, Allah tells us directly in the Quran, He tells the Prophet, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ, that you are basically the best of all examples. So we know that we should read the seerah, we should read about the Prophet's examples with the companions, how he used to, just the concepts of how he used to laugh and joke and just be a happy, like optimistic person is also an example of how the more we learn, the more we want to exemplify that in our lives. But also have living examples. This could be in a friend. So for example, it doesn't have to be a one-all be-all, right? You might have one friend who has this one really good characteristic, and you try to learn how to be that person from them. So for example, whenever I got married, I realized Ali was a very good listener. Like that's something I really liked about like whenever we talked, he was a really good listener. And not only that, he would always ask like follow-up questions, which made you think that, oh, this person's really listening to me. And I feel like I tried to follow that and try to kind of copy that when I was talking to my friends. So it could be just one characteristic that you like from one of your friends or your parent, or Amira, you can come. Amira. Hey. You can you think about like this one person and their one characteristic that you really like about that person, and then you try to copy them. So it could be this one person you see, like whenever they get agitated, how they calm themselves down. Oh, I want to become like that person. Or whenever you look at one of your parents and you really like this quality in your parent, you try to copy them. So it doesn't have to be this one person, oh, is my role model in every single characteristic that they have. It's that you can nitpick certain characteristics of certain people and try to exemplify it and copy it. So it's very important to have role models in our personal lives that we can follow other than just the Prophet Muhammad's example. Number 3 is to not just learn, but practice. And there's a hadith about this where the Prophet Muhammad tells us, إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ بِالتَّعَلُّمِ, that knowledge comes from learning. And إِنَّمَا الْحِلْمُ بِالتَّحَلُّمِ. So we're going to talk about this concept of hilm, which is forbearance or wisdom or controlling your anger. But he basically says the way to achieve this is to practice it. So every time you feel yourself getting angry and agitated, the way you become better at controlling that is that each time it happens, you monitor yourself. You're self-aware of, for example, what happens to yourself when you're about to react or when you're about to get angry. How do you control this? So you have to practice. Learning, becoming a better person is not just, oh, I learned this and I took this quality and I want this quality and I put it on myself. It comes with practice, and there were times where you will fail, where you're like, oh, I've been trying to become, for example, a humble person, but I felt myself getting arrogant in this moment. Or, for example, I really want to control my tongue, but I let loose and I said something that I didn't mean in that moment. But the point is, after that happens, what do you do? Do you self-reflect and do you work on not doing that the next time, or do you just accept it and move on? Okay? And the last one is making dua. And obviously this is a step from all the steps for anything we're trying to do. We always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us people who are better mannered, who have good character. And that's why we say, Allahumma ahsan khuluqi kama ahsanta khalqi, that make our manners better just like you made our outer appearance good. So what did we say the 4 steps are? Number 1? What's number 1? No, that's number 3. So it's number 1. Seek knowledge. Thank you. Number 2. I know you guys were listening. I saw y'all listening. Number 2, the Prophet Muhammad is what? Seek role models. Number 3, practice. And number 4 is make dua. So those are 4 steps that you do to have a better character. Now, what are some blessings of good manners? And we'll go into this before going to specific manners. What are some reasons? Now, you don't need to like, you don't need to be convinced to be a good person, right? I don't need to give you the blessings to become a good person. But like I said, the more you know, the more you want, right? So the more you know what are the rewards of being a better person, the more you want to become a better person. The more you know how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ praised those who have such and such character, the more you want that character. So obviously, we all want to be good people. I'd hope everyone in this room doesn't aspire to become a bad person, right? But you also want to know what the Prophet said, how the Prophet encouraged other people to do that. Number one is that the best blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give you is husn khuluq. The Prophet ﷺ said, Ya Rasulullah, ma khir ma a'ti al-abd, that the companions asked the Prophet, what's the best that can be given to a person? And he said, khuluqun hasan, that good character. So he's explicitly saying the best gift Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give you is good character. Number two is that we know that a person, so the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ tells us that a person can achieve the level of a sawamun qawwam with good character. Now what does this mean? A sawam, a qawwam is not just someone who fasts and who prays. A sawam and qawwam is someone who constantly fasts and constantly prays. So not just fasting in Ramadan and not just praying your 5 prayers. This is someone who's praying their sunnahs all the time. This is someone who's fasting every single Monday and Thursday. If you are someone who's not able to do that because it's not easy to fast that often and to pray that many extra prayers, then you can achieve that same level on Yawm al-Qiyamah, that same level in the eyes of Allah by just being a good person, by having good manners, by having a good character, because that will weigh more than the fasts and the prayers on your scale on the Day of Judgment. So by being a good person, you can achieve a level of someone who's constantly worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 3 is that someone cannot have full iman without having good character. أكمل المؤمنين إيمانا أحسنهم خلقا. That the people with the most complete iman are the people with best of character. So how do you know? Like, let's say you see a person praying, they're always at the masjid, and you know that a person fasts, and you know that a person gives charity. How do you know if they're a good person beyond just that? Like, how do you know if a person is a good person beyond just the basic things that we have to do in Islam? Is by their character and how they treat other people. Number 4 is that, remember the last, one of the last Tazkiyah topics that we did was loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how we want to achieve Allah loving us just as much as we want Jannah and just as much as we want to be saved from the adab. One of the ways for us to be loved by Allah is to have good manners, because there's an explicit hadith where the Prophet says, Inna Allah jamilun yuhibbul jamal. Right? We've heard this before, that Allah is beautiful and He loves beauty. And then He says that He loves the best of characters, and He hates, the translation is pettiness, but it's not really pettiness. It's basically the opposite of good character. So He loves good character, and He loves good manners, and He loves people who treat other people better, and He hates those who treat other people badly. And then lastly, we all want to be close. So during the Ramadan series, we talked about the Day of Judgment, right? And the process of the Day of Judgment and the people who are going to be close to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ on Yawm al-Qiyamah and in Jannah. And that's something we all try to achieve. That if you want to be close to the Prophet on the Day of Judgment, he says that إِنَّ أَقْرَبَكُم مِّنِّي مَنْزِلًا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَحْسَنَكُمْ أَخْلَاقًا فِي الدُّنْيَا. That the best of you next to me on the Day of Judgment are the ones with the best manners in this world. So if you want that closeness on the Day of Judgment, you have to achieve that goodness in this world. Now, what are the 5 blessings? Let's see. Let's test you guys again. Number 1. Should I start cold calling you guys? Will that work? Number 1 was about that good character is the best gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give you. Number 2 is that you can achieve what? The same level as Sawam and Qawam, someone who fasts and prays. Number 3 is that you cannot have full what without good manners? Iman. Number 4 is that who loves good manners? Allah. And number 5 is that we will be close to who on the Day of Judgment? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. Now, when it comes to the good manners themselves, this was kind of interesting for me to choose, because there's so many different manners that I could talk about, right? I could talk about the importance of being humble. I could talk about the importance of not lying, the importance of treating other people well, the importance of not getting angry, the importance of being an optimistic person. There's so many different manners that we could talk about. So what I did was just pick that hadith that I started with and kind of break that down, because this is an explicit hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is telling the specific person that these are two qualities that Allah loves about you. So now what are those qualities? The hadith is that there were some tribes that were going to see the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And these people were traveling, for a few days, for a few weeks, however long it took them to get there. And when they reached the masjid, or when they reached where the Prophet was, they were in such a rush to see the Prophet. They were anticipating that moment that they basically didn't even tie their camels. They just left their camels. They didn't change out of their old clothes or their sweaty clothes. They just went immediately to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in the state that they were in to say salam to him. Now there was one person who stayed behind, and this man's name is Al-Ashaj. And he was a very deliberate and calculating person. You know that kind of person that you feel like is always never does anything without thinking about it and contemplating the consequences of that action? That's the kind of person he was. So he basically stayed back. He was the one who tied up all the camels. He had these fresh clothes that he had in his bag that he hadn't worn during the entire journey, saved just for that moment to meet the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, because he wanted to do it in the best of all states. And he did that, and then he finally went to the Prophet Muhammad after everyone had already said salam to him, and his tribe was kind of like, oh, this guy is the last guy, he took so long to come. But then the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ pointed him out, and he said, Inna fik khaslatayn, that you have two qualities in you, yuhibbuhumullah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves about you. And he asked, what are those qualities? And the Prophet said, al-hilm wal-ana, that you are forbearing and you are deliberate. So let's talk about what these two things mean. Al-hilm, now the English word is forbearance, but there's so many different ways that this can be translated. And the main two ways of translating this word are wisdom and controlling your anger. And even those two are related, because in order for you to control your anger, you have to be wise. If you can't control your anger, you're not a wise person, right? So I wanted to break down what it means to be wise and what it means to control your anger when it comes to being a good person and having good manners. Now, wisdom itself, hikmah, means to put everything in its right place, right? So that nothing is out of place, everything is exactly where it needs to be. So when you're wise in your religion, that means that you're doing everything right and wrong, as in halal and haram, right? That you're putting things in the right place, you're only doing things that are good and halal, and you're not doing things that are haram and wrong. That's when it comes with religion. But what does it mean to be wise with other people? How do you interact with other people in a wise way? And this can be broken down into so many things, and I just chose a few things to focus on. Number one, we talked about the importance of community. We've done so many talks about that, how important it is for a person to be part of their community. You can't be a good Muslim and be a monk. You can't basically be living in isolation without interacting with the community and be a good Muslim. You have to go to Jum'ah every Friday. You should be praying in a masjid. You should be helping other people. There's so many things that we have to be doing in the community. And also we know the hadith that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, if some Muslim goes and interacts with his community and is patient with their harms, or how the community sometimes has annoying tendencies, that person is patient, is better than a Muslim who does not do that and who stays at home. So it's better for you to be a part of this community than not interact at all. Now, when you do interact with this community, how do you do this with good manners? The biggest thing is the importance of controlling our tongue. And again, we've had talks about gossip and backbiting and all that. And we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us how much He despises evil talk, or the talk of scandals, or the talk of gossip, or the talk of rumors. لا يحب الله الجهر بالسوء من القول إلا من ظلم. That Allah does not love any sort of evil talk or scandalous talk except someone who was treated unjustly, right? We talked about when is it allowed to talk about other people and when is it considered backbiting. So the importance of not talking about other people and not hurting other people. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, يَا مَعْشَرَ مَنْ آمَنَ بِلِسَانِهِ. He basically is calling out to the people. And he says, oh, you who have become Muslims with their tongues, وَلَمْ يَدْخُلْ الْإِيمَانُ قَلْبَهِ. And the iman still has not entered their hearts. لَا تَغْتَابُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا عَوْرَاتِهِمْ فَإِنَّ مَنِ اتَّبَعَ عَوْرَاتِهِمْ يَتَّبِعُ اللَّهُ عَوْرَتُهُ وَمَنْ يَتَّبِعَ اللَّهُ عَوْرَتُهُ يَفْضَحُهُ فِي بَيْتِهِ. That the Prophet ﷺ is calling out the people and saying, oh, you who have believed with your tongues and not your hearts, do not backbite the Muslims and do not seek their faults. Which means do not go looking around at people, what is wrong with them, or what are the bad things that they do, or what are the sins that we do, or what is the next topic that I can talk about them, or how can I expose them. Because someone who seeks to expose the faults of other Muslims, then Allah will seek his faults. Allah will expose that person. And if Allah exposes that person, He will expose that person even if this person is doing something in the privacy of his own room, right? So think about that hadith and think about what it means. If you are someone who is constantly trying to find the tea about the next person, who is constantly trying to find out what is the next topic that I can talk about, what is the next rumor that I can be a part of, what is the next kind of juicy conversation that I can have with my friends, and it's always about other people, or not even always. If it's even once or twice about other people, and especially about other people's sins and something haram or wrong that they do, then the Prophet is telling us explicitly in this hadith that if you expose that person and you talk about that person, Allah will expose you even if nobody knows about your sin but yourself. Even if you're doing your sin so privately and you think you've left no traces of that sin, Allah will still expose you if you are going and exposing other people. So the crucial aspect of being a good Muslim and having good character is exemplifying that in your speech. Not being a part of gossip, not backbiting, not being a part of the scandal culture that we live in. I mean, think about it. What is all the celebrity news always about? Right? It's always about the next scandal, about who cheated on who and who got divorced from who and who did this and who did what. That's what the entire culture of gossip is about in this country. And that has leaked onto our communities and our societies. And we do that in our homes, in our masajid, in our community circles, where we're always talking about other people. So realize that manners start with controlling your tongue. Another aspect of interacting with other people is actually being an easygoing person. Just being an easygoing, cheerful person. If you are the kind of person, you know how some people, for some reason, the more religious they become, or the more they learn about religion, the more rigid they become, and the more basically the opposite of cheerful, the more miserable they come. They say, oh, what's the sixth pillar of Islam? Misery. That's a saying that people say now because of how miserable some people are, how they are so difficult to be around because all they can do is criticize or say, oh, you're not doing this right, you're not doing that right, or whatever it is. These are basically people who are not exemplifying the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. There's a hadith that one of the Sahabis said that مَا رَأَيْتُ أَحَدًا أَكْثَرَ تَبَسُّمًا مِنْ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. That I have not seen anyone who smiles more than the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Right? Can you guys think about that? When we think about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, what do we imagine, or what do we think about? And the fact that he smiled more than all the other people around them, do we see that in our teachers? Do we see that in our scholars? Do we see that in the people around us? We should be the people who are always smiling. Smiling itself is a form of charity. We should be people who are easygoing and who are not so rigid. We know that the Prophet ﷺ sometimes would laugh with the Sahaba so much that you could see all the way in his back teeth because of how hard he would be laughing sometimes. That's the kind of atmosphere we want to create in our own circles, in our own communities, where we're just lighthearted and smiling and cheerful and easygoing. We go with the flow. We also have to have this, this is also related, is to be compassionate towards other people. Put yourself in the shoes of other people whenever you treat them. How would you want to and how would you expect to be treated, and that's how you should treat other people. And we have so many examples of this. The hadith about the Bedouin who went and started peeing in the mosque. He started urinating in the mosque, in the masjid. And the Sahaba went over there to beat him up because obviously it's a bad thing to do. And the Prophet ﷺ let him finish and then didn't scold him. He just ordered the Sahaba to clean up after him and basically educated this guy. Imagine someone doing that in the masjid nowadays and how people would react to that kind of person. Or another one where this person came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, give me permission to do zina. Can you imagine going to the most elite sheikh that you know in this community and telling him, hey, can I go do zina with this person? How that sheikh would react, or how you would not even feel comfortable doing something like that because of how intimidating, sometimes, just the question itself. But this person felt comfortable enough to go to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, tell him, give me permission to do something so haram, to give him permission to do zina, and the Sahaba got upset where they started to basically scold him or rebuke him, and he told them, shh. He quieted them. And he told them, basically, be quiet, and he told the guy, come here. And then what did he do? Did he say no? No, he said, would you want someone to do that to your mother? Would you want someone to do that to your sister? Would you want someone to do that with your aunt? He gave him an example, and he gave him advice in a way where this person left not wanting to do that. Not that that person left being like, oh, I didn't get permission. It's like, I no longer want to do the sin, because the way that the Prophet advised him was so compassionate. It was so kind. He used good, kind words with this person who was coming. He educated him instead of criticizing him, even though other people wanted to criticize him. He educated them instead of criticizing. And then this person went away not wanting to do the sin. In another narration, there was a funeral, basically, like, you know how you have the, what is it called? Procession, the funeral procession, where like people are walking by. That happened in front of him, and the Prophet Muhammad stood up out of respect. And then the companion said, oh, he was a Jew. Like, basically, you don't need to stand up. This guy was not a Muslim. Like, you can sit down. And the Prophet Muhammad said, was he not a person? Like, did this person not have a soul? Was he not a human being? And he showed compassion. He was a compassionate person to even those who had passed away and were no longer there, even those who were not Muslim. Right? So we have to, that's why I say read more about the Prophet Muhammad's examples and what he did, because that will make us so much more relaxed in the way we treat other people. We're so, like, I've seen examples of this around here, you guys. Like, whenever one of you or some of you see other people doing something that they think is wrong, the kind of advice they will give is not compassionate, it's not merciful, and it's not easygoing, and it's not in the example of what the Prophet Muhammad would do. When you see someone doing something wrong that you think is wrong over here, first of all, you should be doing husn al-dhan. Right? You should be giving them 70 excuses before you think they're doing something wrong. And then your advice should be not that, oh, I know better than you, or I'm better than you. Your advice should be in a way that the Prophet Muhammad used to give advice. Okay, so make sure you exemplify that. The Prophet Muhammad would shorten his prayer whenever he would hear a child crying to make it easier on the mother. So he was constantly thinking about other people and thinking about how other people feel and how other people want to be treated, right? And how other people, how to be kind to other people, how to be compassionate and merciful to other people. He was very easygoing around these people too. And he said in a hadith that whoever is kind, man kana layyina, kind, and hayyina, affable, basically friendly, and sahla, easygoing, haramallahu ala nar, haramallahu alayhi nar. That whoever is kind, easygoing, and friendly, he will not be, basically the fire will not touch him. Have you guys ever thought of these three descriptions as like good manners or kind of characteristics that will take a person to Jannah? We never say that. We never say a good Muslim is an easygoing person. We never say a good Muslim is a friendly person. Those are not the first things, are instinctual things that we think about people. But these are the things that the Prophet Muhammad told us and exemplified in his life. He was he was calm, he was relaxed, he was easygoing, he was nice to others, he made other people feel good, he was not intimidating, he made himself accessible to other people, he was humble. People could walk into a room and not know which person's the Prophet, because he blended in with other people. He didn't put himself on a level higher than other people, right? So that's the kind of example we have to follow. The Prophet also told us that the good person is like a soft plant, that whenever the wind comes, it moves along with the wind and it stays balanced. And the bad person is like a tree that is rigid and is basically so rigid that strong wind can uproot this tree. What is that telling us? That a good person is adaptable. You go with the flow. You're not the kind of person that's always against everything that people are telling you to do. You're not the kind of person that constantly has some sort of criticism, constantly has some sort of like response, oh, like this is not the right thing, we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do that. You go with the flow, you're relaxed, you're an easy person to be around. That is what a person with good character has. Now the other part of this, the other part of wisdom is controlling your anger. And I'll be shorter on this because it's quite understandable what we mean to control our anger. But when we said the word hilm, means wisdom and controlling your anger, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of his names is Al-Halim. And what does this mean, to be Al-Halim? It means that Allah is the one who knows that people deserve to be punished, but he doesn't punish them. And that he could get angry, but he doesn't get angry. And that's why he always kind of pairs this Halim with Ghafoor, that Allah is the most forgiving, the most Halim, because he forgives these people instead of punishing them, even though they deserve punishment. So we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran tells us not to be angry, right? Those who get angry and control their anger are those who go to Jannah. And there's this ayah, that tells us anger is related to three things. Number one is to be forgiven. Number two is to go to Jannah. And number three is to be from those who are the muttaqeen, the best of people. And he says this all in one ayah. وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُم. Forgiveness. وَجَنَّةٍ عَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضِ. Jannah. وَعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. To be from the muttaqeen. And the next ayah says, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السِّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ. Now, كَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ, like a kind of a side note over here, doesn't mean to control your anger necessarily. Ghayz means that feeling that comes before anger. So it is anger, but it's internal anger. So when you see something on the outside, that's external anger, that's ghadab. And when something's on the inside bubbling up, but it hasn't come out yet, that's ghayz. So basically, the people that Allah is praising are those people that control it while it's bubbling up before it comes out. Right? They're controlling their anger while it's inside. And the Prophet tells us that there is nothing swallowed with a greater reward from Allah than a person who swallows his rage, thereby seeking the ajr from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So the Prophet is telling us over here that it's normal to feel angry, it's normal to feel rage. Some things will make you feel really upset and you won't like, but in that moment, what differentiates you from being a good person or a bad person is what do you do with that feeling of rage and what do you do with that feeling of anger. A person came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and said, advise me, give me advice. And he left this very blank, very open, basically tell me how can I become a better person. And the Prophet said, لا تغضب. And then he asked again, advise me. And the Prophet said, لا تغضب. And then he asked for a third time, advise me. And the Prophet said again, لا تغضب, do not get angry. That it was so important for this advice to reach this person that instead of giving him 3 pieces of different advice, the Prophet told him 3 times, do not get angry. And the Prophet also said, the best of people are those who are slow to get angry and quick to forgive. And the worst of people are those who are quick to get angry and slow to forgive. So you want to be the kind of person in your life. We all want to be the kind of person where we slowly, even if we are people who have anger, we train our anger to become inside us and something that we can train to go away. Where we learn to be patient, where we learn to calm our emotions, where we learn to basically manage ourselves, recognize what is it that triggers me, how do I get angry, what happens when I'm angry, what do I do? And you train that feeling inside you until you become the kind of person that, they're like, this person never gets angry. I can't imagine this person getting angry. And then you're the person that even when you do get angry, you're quick to forgive and you're quick to let things go. And what do we do when we get angry? We know from the prophetic advice that anger is from shaitan. So when you get angry, the first thing you should do is say, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, so that the shaitan goes away. The second thing that you do is you make wudu, right? Because you're kind of trying to calm down this heat inside you, because anger is related to heat. You calm it down by making wudu. And the last thing is that if you're standing, you sit down. If you're sitting down, you lay down. And this is very interesting because what the Prophet's doing here is telling us to notice the physical feelings we feel in our body when you get angry. You know how like our face turns red or your heart starts beating really fast or you feel this anxiety in your stomach. These are all things that when the Prophet's telling us to relax our physical bodies, our emotions also get relaxed. So these are things that we should do when we start to feel those emotions bubble up inside us. And the last thing in this hadith is al-ana, which means to do things thoughtfully, to do things deliberately, to basically think before you act. And the opposite of ana is ajala. So the Prophet says that ana is from Allah and ajala is from shaitan. So to be hasty and to make quick decisions without thinking about the consequences of your decisions. And this could also be things that you say. So if you say something quick or if you do something without actually pondering and contemplating the thing that you're going to do, that is to be hasty. And we can give examples of both from the prophets because, you know, the prophets also give us examples in their stories of how we can do or not do certain things. The story of Musa and Khidr alayhim salam is that when Musa kept getting told by Khidr, stop asking questions, he kind of lost his patience and he said, okay, I won't ask any more questions, give me one more chance. And the Prophet said if he had not asked for that one more chance, if he left it open, he would have learned so many more lessons, right? So in that moment, because he was kind of hasty and was not more deliberate in the thing that he said something that lost him lessons. I mean, this is from Allah's plan, of course, but we learn a lesson from this. The opposite of this is Yusuf alayhi salam. When the person came to take Yusuf out of jail to go to the king, did Yusuf immediately say, yes, I want to get out of jail? He'd been there for years. He said, no. First, I need to clear up my name. I need to prove my innocence, and then I will leave this prison. So he was deliberate. He was thoughtful. He didn't rush into the thing that seemed like the right thing to do. He took his time when making that decision. So we conclude with the hadith that the Prophet says, "Inna min akhyarakum ahsanakum khalqa," that the best of you are the ones with the best of manners. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us people with good akhlaq, to make us people with good manners, to make us from those who are good manners are heavy on the scales on Yawm al-Qiyamah, that our good manners bring us close to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Sallallahu wa sallam ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Do you guys have any questions? Yes.
Well, it was more about like people. So I was supposed to say that the talk was really good. I really enjoyed this one. In my opinion, I think this was like the best talk that we did.
Thanks.
Better than the rest.
Better than my
Yeah, I thought like the things that you said were so good. Like you really shifted the focus away from like I feel like nowadays people measure what a good Muslim is based on how much Quran you know, how many times you know, or like how many sunnahs you pray. But instead, with this talk, you're basically saying like, no, like you should. A good Muslim is like a Muslim like. Sorry. It's like depending on how much love do you have in your heart, how much kindness do you have in your heart, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And going back to like what you said before, like all the way in the beginning, like good character is taught or learned or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Islam is taught, but like good character is like you can't learn good character. It's like you can teach someone like the fiqh and like the rulings of Islam. And you could tell someone like, oh, the Prophet like he was very merciful and you should be merciful. But that's like way different from like developing a merciful heart, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like you can teach Islam, but you can't teach good character.
I would say that it's a mix of both, because a person can turn from a bad person into a good person. There's redemption for everyone. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives everyone the opportunity to change and become better within their lifetimes.
Yeah.
So I would say Islam is taught, and good manners are both. You can be born with them and you can learn them, because a person can be a very like annoying person, and then one day they like wake up and realize, oh, these are my weaknesses, these are my flaws, this is what I need to work on, and they can become good. So I think it can kind of be like a person can be like, oh, well, if good manners are inherent, then I'm a bad person, there's nothing I can do about it. It's like, no, that's not true. You can always become a better person. You can always learn how to become a better person. And yeah, when it comes to what you said, it's a balance, right? It's not just that if you're a good person but you don't pray or you don't read the Quran, then you're not good, right? You have to do both. And everything in Islam is about balance. And we've talked so much about the importance of balance. So it's balancing between the ritual aspects and the character aspects. Because you can't be, and that's the hadith, that the person will come on the Day of Judgment with prayers, with fast, with all of this, but he'll still go to hell because of the way he treated other people. So it's a balance of both. You need to be doing the ritual, but you can't have the ritual without the character to balance it out.
Yeah, I just like the way that you shifted the focus without demeaning like any either or.
Yeah, exactly.
You
They're both
weren't
important.
saying that a good person is someone who does pray, or like a good person is someone who's only kind. You're just like kind of, I don't know.
Balancing it. Yeah.
Balancing
Yeah.
it. Basically.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything else? Any other questions? Yeah.
I kind of had a question on like the angry part. So like,
Mhm.
is there always like situation where like someone's like always like making you angry, and like, someone who's like constantly having to like train their anger? How do they like feel like holding all that anger in and like not like how much it just comes out?
Well, it depends on the situation, right? If it's a friend that's always making you angry, then just, maybe don't be their friend. Maybe they're not the right friend for you. And it could be a family member that's always making you angry, and you don't have a choice except to be around them, And you just take that as building of character. That's all I can say. Because if you're in a situation where you're in a circumstance where you're always feeling these negative emotions and you can't get yourself out of that situation, then this is Allah testing you. Because Allah tests everyone with something. And if Allah's testing your anger in that moment, it's because He wants you to build that forbearance and build that control to where you stop being angry and you stop, or not even stop being angry, it's that you stop acting on that anger. Because the emotions are valid, right? none of this is invalidating the feeling that you feel inside. And it's just about, what do you do with that feeling? Do you let it fuel up and become rage, or do you force it to go down and become something more calm, right? So if you're in that situation where you're constantly feeling that, then think of it as kind of like you being trained to turn that into something where you feel calmer and where you practice how you react to that. Does that answer your question? Any other questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Trying to be okay, I don't know if that's something you way you treat me, but up to in which level that we could really resist ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
not. I mean, I'm not fighting back.
Yeah.
Sometimes like express our
Mm-hmm.
feeling that hey, this is too much for me, without me being
Mm-hmm.
saying something that must not be true.
Yeah. The important thing to know is that it's easy to be a good person when everybody around you is making it easy to be a good person. When are your manners truly tested, and when can you truly prove, do you have good character, or was it just easy? Like, if everybody around you is nice all the time, then yes, of course you're going to be nice and kind. You have no reason to be, angry or mean or any of that. When your character is truly tested to see if you have that character or not, is when your surroundings and your circumstances start to push your buttons and start to test whether you have that or not. So your character needs to be tested. Because if it's never tested, how do you know that your character is resistant? Because you're not responsible for other people's actions. You're responsible for your reactions. You're responsible for what you do and how you react to other people. So yes, either you distance yourself, and if you can't distance yourself from that situation, then realize that your character is being tested over here. Are you actually a good person, or was it just easy to be a good person? So when it's not easy, that's when you're truly being tested, whether you have that patience, you have that forbearance, you have that ability to control yourself, you have that kind of adaptability in the flow to where even when things are hard, you like loosen up so that like you continue being a good person. So it's not that our environment's always going to be sunshine and rainbows. There's going to be times where our environment tests our character, where we're more triggered, where people make us more angry, where there's more options for us to be less easygoing, more rigid. Those are the times when we truly need to build our character into something bigger. And that's why the Prophet said, the best of you are those the best to your families. Because it's with your families that you can be yourself. It's very easy to be kind in public, in the community, around friends, around in school, at work, in front of other people. But when you're around the same people every single day, are you showing your good character then in the privacy of your homes, with your own family, with your own parents and kids and siblings and spouses? Are you showing your good character then or not? That's what truly tests if we're good, if we have good akhlaq or not. Okay? Any other questions? All right. Jazakallah khair. I'll see you guys next Friday, inshallah. Salama.